Women loved the way he looked, the way he sounded.
People looked at him as the king of R&B.
Welcome to MsMojo, and today we're counting down our picks for Hollywood's dirtiest secrets that only came out years later.
For one thing, I am always trying to outdo the last thing that I did.
Diddy's lawsuits. For years, rapper Sean Combs, known as Diddy, was the producer and executive behind some of the biggest names in music.
Again. If you happy, then be with him.
In 2023, his ex, Cassie Ventura, filed a lawsuit citing a wide array of violent crimes. Video of Combs assaulting Ventura in a hotel in 2016 forced Combs to confront the allegations directly.
My behavior on that video is inexcusable.
But the floodgates had opened. Several others have since lodged their own claims dating back over the last 30 years. In March 2024, the Department of Homeland Security went through several of Combs' properties, but they refused to disclose the reason. Stories of his behavior have only grown, with more colleagues and victims coming forward.
You know, I know Diddy 30 years. I'm just praying. It's a very sad situation.
Joan Crawford's abuse. Remembered as one of classic Hollywood's most luminous lights, the reputation and legacy of Joan Crawford was forever altered upon the release of her adoptive daughter's tell-all memoir. Mummy Dearest is Christina Crawford's account of decades of abuse at her mother's hand.
Maybe that's why, Father.
The memoir rocked the industry Joan Crawford helped define. Later, details of violent episodes and physical mistreatment would be immortalized in the book's 1981 film adaptation.
No more hangers!
These allegations have been much debated over the years, but the fact remains that the book and movie shattered the illusion of the star's flawless persona.
Why must everything be a contest?
Clark Gable and Loretta Young's secret daughter. This story sounds like something pulled from one of its key players' movies.
Oh, I wish you hadn't.
When she became pregnant in 1935, actress Loretta Young hid the baby's true parentage. Clark Gable was married at the time, and Young feared for her public image. So she stayed out of the spotlight for a bit and faked an illness. A year and a half later, she announced she'd adopted a baby girl, who was actually her real daughter.
But it was all a smokescreen, and it fooled nobody.
Young kept this secret for decades, though there was always speculation in Hollywood about the truth since her daughter looked quite a lot like Gable. However, the circumstances of the pregnancy were even more tragic. Purportedly, the child was the product of a non-consensual encounter between Gable and Young.
It wasn't until I was 31 that I finally did ask my mother and did hear the truth from her.
Judy Garland's studio-enforced substance use disorder. The Wizard of Oz star was only 13 years old when she signed a contract with MGM.
You're off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz.
What she endured there would plague her for the rest of her tragically brief life. Studio executives preyed on her self-esteem and gambled with her health. They put her on a strict regime of pills and deprived her of substantive meals.
Judy must lose some weight, but the part of Dorothy is hers.
Though her personal troubles would be widely reported in the press, they were seen as simply that, personal troubles. It took years for people to learn the true extent to MGM's responsibility in the substance use disorder that would ultimately hasten her death.
Man, she knew there was no way that she could turn and, refuse this medication.
Alfred Hitchcock's abuse of Tippi Hedren. In the early 1960s, when the master of suspense called, you answered. Tippi Hedren had never starred in a movie before Alfred Hitchcock plucked her out of obscurity and cast her as the lead in The Birds.
Why, Charlie, darling, would I try to pressure you?
It sounds like something out of a dream. For Hedren, it became a nightmare. Not only was he very controlling and possessive, but when she rebuffed his advances, Hitchcock went out of his way to torment her on set and refused to let her out of her contract. It wasn't until after his death in 1980 that she spoke about her mistreatment publicly.
He told me he'd ruined my career. I said, do what you have to do. I don't care.
R. Kelly's misconduct. Hiding behind one's fame can only last until victims no longer remain silent. Rumors swirled for years about Grammy-winning singer, songwriter, and producer R. Kelly.
Y'all killing me with this!
While court cases had dogged him since 1996, it wasn't until 2019 TV documentary Surviving R. Kelly that the public finally knew the true extent of his crimes.
R. Kelly is this fun, laughing, loving guy.
but Robert is the devil.
Several victims came forward with allegations of misconduct. There was enough evidence to convince a jury, let alone the public. His subsequent conviction and sentencing to 31 years in prison was the punctuation mark on decades of hidden crimes.
This was a racketeering trial, organized crime charges.
The dark side of Nickelodeon. Hollywood is littered with stories about child stars taking wrong turns. Investigation Discovery's 2024 docuseries, Quiet on Set, shed some new light on why that might be the case.
Being close to Dan could mean an extra level of success.
For years, Nickelodeon bombarded millions of kids with images of celebrities getting slimed, not to mention some bizarrely foot-forward comedy. Many of the network's former stars and creative staff have alleged multiple instances of unprofessional and, frankly, horrific behavior by longtime executive producer Dan Schneider.
By the late 2000s, Dan had more control than pretty much any showrunner at Nickelodeon.
The series' biggest bombshell was the revelation that former Nickelodeon star Drake Bell was the secret plaintiff in a case against dialogue coach and producer Brian Peck.
His entire side of the courtroom was full.
Epstein Island. Financier Jeffrey Epstein's address book was littered with notable names, from politicians to socialites to actual royalty. The exploits of Epstein and his partner and longtime right hand, Ghislaine Maxwell, became somewhat public in the mid-2000s, when the former was convicted and given a lenient sentence for sex crimes. This didn't deter him from continuing his pattern of sexual exploitation. The extent of the horrors committed at his private getaway in the US Virgin Islands wouldn't be revealed until his high-profile second case in 2019.
It has hosted American politicians, world dignitaries.
Although rumours and conspiracy theories still swirl about his death in prison and just how much his A-list clientele may have known about his crimes, new details are still emerging all the time.
And you could tell he was pissed, well pissed. And I'm scared to death.
Bill Cosby's decades of misconduct. In the 1980s, he was America's dad. By the 2020s, he was public enemy number one.
I don't understand what you're talking about.
Though his stand-up made him famous, Bill Cosby's inoffensive sitcom persona made him lovable. So when his long history of sexual misconduct was finally revealed, it felt like the ultimate betrayal. Allegations existed early on, but Cosby and his lawyers tried for years to silence victims and media personalities who dared to report on them.
I've never seen anything like this.
The story finally broke open in the mid-2010s. Accusers came out in droves, with stories spanning over 5 decades. And unfortunately, many cases were impossible to prosecute due to the statute of limitations. His widely publicized trial in 2018 ended with his conviction, which was overturned in 2021 as a result of due process violations.
Mr. Cosby, how does it feel to be home?
Cosby did not say a word.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications.
Harvey Weinstein's reign of terror.
In October 2017, Harvey Weinstein finally lost control of the story.
A Hollywood producer has the power to make or break careers. Harvey Weinstein mastered the art of the Oscar campaign, but his prestige came at the cost of many women's livelihoods and safety. Over his 3 decades as a Hollywood power player, several actresses allege that he kept the predatory casting couch practice alive and well. Even though several celebrities said the quiet part out loud over the years, it wasn't until 2017's #MeToo explosion that Weinstein suffered any consequences. The allegations led to Weinstein being charged in both New York and Los Angeles, as well as becoming the target of multiple civil suits.
"Please don't sentence me to life in prison," he told the court.
The overturning of his New York conviction in 2024 led to outcry, but the story is still ongoing.
This today is an act of institutional betrayal.
Which of these scandals or crimes were you the most shocked to find out about?
Then the studios completely controlled all the publicity.
Of course.
So